My guest today is Nikki Iles. Nikki's a pianist, a composer, an experienced educator, and I'm very lucky to have her here on the show today. I caught up with her in France on the Dordogne Jazz Summer School, where she's one of the teachers. Welcome to the show, Nikki.
Thank you, Andrea.
And how are you enjoying France?
Oh, it's wonderful. A little too hot.
Too hot. So what are you doing here in France, Nikki?
I'm teaching part of the annual summer school here. It seems to be growing annually, and they wanted some extra staff here, so I'm really delighted to be part of the team.
And you came across with Pete Churchill, who's doing some work with Paul Levere on the vocal course, but you've got a special relationship, haven't you, with Pete? So
well, yes, he lives in the same road. No, it was my husband. Yeah, so it's really nice to be here together, actually.
Yeah, and also you brought your daughter along, so she's enjoying the summer holiday.
Absolutely.
Here, isn't she?
Yeah.
It's your first time in the Dordogne Jazz Summer School. How do you find the whole kind of area? Because it's quite delightful here, isn't it? The chateau and
it's absolutely beautiful views. It's an ideal kind of performance space in the evening, and to just take in the whole ambience of France. I mean, it's fantastic. Really great.
I'd just like to sort of talk a little bit about some of the things you've been doing recently. You recently toured and released a new album.
Yeah, this is a group I've been working with for a long, long time. And it's been a bit of a slow burn, really, and started off as it was Steve Mead at the Manchester Jazz Festival asked me to form a band quite a few years ago of all my favourite musicians. So that was the kind of kernel of the band. And
who are your favourite musicians then?
Well, there's quite a lot of them, but
name a few.
Obviously, yeah, but it was at the time it is Steve Watts. People I've been playing with and felt they understood my music. I'd always wanted to work with Norma because I've known her for years.
That's Norma Winston.
Yeah, Norma Winston. Mike Walker I go back with to my northern days, and you come back to work together now and again, but I really wanted to do something to rekindle that relationship. Mark Lockhart, I mean, I've always, a bit like Julian Arguelles, been somebody I'd always admired because of their playing and their openness, but also the composition that's so much part of their sound and their kind of approach to the music. So I thought it'd be a really great opportunity to ask Mark. I had worked with him probably 25 years ago with Steve Berry, but so this was a great chance.
So we're going to hear one of those tracks from your new album. The album is called Westerly.
Yeah.
It's by the Printmakers. And what track are we going to hear now?
We're going to hear a track called Tideway. This track I actually wrote down when I was down at Norma's house on the Kent coast, and her house looks out over the sea to France. And we'd been out on a walk, and the rain, the weather had come down, and it was quite an eerie atmosphere. And so I started it. The whole thing starts off with that kind of feeling. But we actually came in and we were watching some jazz videos, and I hadn't really seen Elis Regina. It was actually, a live concert with Jobim, and I was so knocked out with the kind of understated beauty of the music. So I just came home and wrote this tune. So it's Tideway is Norma's house, so it's Kent Goes to Brazil.
Suddenly the sea, the vast horizon with the sky, the crying of the seabirds, the swoop and curve. Now the simple joy to be alone and let emptiness and space fill my mind. Inside we'll leave our stories in the walls and catch an echo of the lives.
So that was Tideway. I'd heard that piece before. We were talking about this because I'd been to some concert, I can't remember now, but I'd seen the Academy Big Band and some ensembles, and I'm sure I'd heard that. Did they play that on?
Yeah, we were at the South Bank part of the festival. And we
Is that London Jazz Festival?
That's right.
Yeah.
And I did a whole set of my music, so I've fleshed out some of these tunes, which was fantastic. So that was a little small band version in the middle of the set.
So you have a connection with the Academy, don't
Yeah.
you? And I also know that you're teaching on the jazz degree course at Middlesex. So
That's right.
what kind of is your role at the Academy then?
Well, I'm teaching all the first study pianists right through from undergrad to postgrad, but I also really enjoy teaching a thing called supporting studies. So it's all the rest of the instrumentalists who have to write, to get into the piano and write piano accompaniment. So I have about 5 lessons a year with each of those. So we get into all sorts of stuff. It's generally a supporting role, but it's sometimes it's a play. Sometimes they come with all sorts of compositional problems, and to do with piano as well. So I love that, actually.
And do you do similar things at Middlesex, or is it very different?
Yeah, kind of different. It's I do more of the class teaching, so I'm doing harmony and theory, some of the studying European movements in jazz, looking at Keith Jarrett folk music and some of the music from our country, actually, and rep and all the bigger classes, really.
There's quite a lot of women on this show, so it seems like there's a lot of women playing and teaching jazz, but actually the reality is there aren't. But I think, if anyone says, do you know any high profile jazz musicians and also jazz educators, then I'd be surprised if people didn't mention you quite a lot. So you've built up a fantastic reputation in that field. And how do you feel about it? Do you feel that it's really important to have role models in education that are good jazz musicians and good educators?
It is important. I look back, and when I think about my role models, well, firstly, women, it is really important to see people up there that are women. And I know for me, people like Jerry Allen, Norma, all these people that have real integrity. I wasn't really taught by many women in the jazz, so that I didn't really have.
We weren't really taught at all, were we?
No, of course we were homespun.
We were slightly taught and mostly self-taught.
Yeah. But it's important. I think it's great to see. People always said that people that taught, or often would say, people that taught don't play, but actually it's not that true at all these days. It's often, they're great players that aren't teaching, but you look at who's at the colleges. There's, the students are very lucky. There's, people like Martin France and having John Taylor there and all these people. So I have role models that are great teachers, and it may not be, they may all have very different ways of teaching. So it may be they're not the conventional showing you everything. Somebody like John Taylor is just so inspiring, just sitting there playing, and he, wants you to find out yourself in a way, and that's another way of learning, another person's approach. But it's important to see people that teach, but then and great players as well.
And this idea of kind of being a role model, we're also talking a little bit about the National Jazz Youth Collective.
Yeah.
And you've done some work for them, and they've been promoting women, and I hear you've been involved in that. Do you think that's an important?
Yes, it's been. You've seen often. It's a funny one, really, because jazz can be very gladiatorial sometimes. It's a bit. I think about me when I was younger, and it's sometimes those jam sessions aren't the easiest things to get into if you're, a sensitive woman or even a sensitive man. But so they have run these workshops to encourage more young women to come in, and I've loved that, actually. And
they separated them, as I understand, didn't they? Separated the women from the lads. Then they eventually integrated them all, and then in fact we were at Parliament, one of those gigs that they host there, and they actually they had a few girls missing because they'd actually got onto high-profile jazz courses around the world.
Really?
Yeah. And they were given a choice, and they decided to choose the best players, which was these 3 lads. One of them was that lad who won the Young Jazz Musician of the Year. So, but I thought it was amazing. There was Dave Holland playing with, all these youngsters, and they were just like phenomenal. So, but I suppose I'm not involved in that organisation, but from the outside, it really makes me happy to see people like you, in there encouraging young women, because, as I said, you're a good jazz educator and a fantastic pianist, and I think it's good for them to see they can do it, and they're obviously in a nurturing environment at the moment.
Absolutely. And also, actually, the composition was a big part. We had, they're all writing, which is great.
Yeah.
Because often you see them more interested in that because they can kind of be a little bit more in control of their environment. So that's been really great.
We're going to hear another track, talking of composing, one that you've composed. What's this one called?
Yeah, this was actually originally from a suite. I had a commission from well, the same as you, John Williams.
Well, John Williams
Yeah.
from Liso's,
Yeah.
Liso's festival.
Yeah, and it was around the. It was working with the poet Roger Garfitt, and around the words of Mary Webb, who was a early 19th century writer, with an octet, and it's pretty horrible Victorian life. But this piece was called. It was part of the wedding, her wedding, and it was a sort of high spot of her life. So it was that kind of trying to encapsulate that reeling first love feeling. So it's called Highlands.
That was Highlands, written by Nikki Iles. You were talking to me, Nikki, about future projects, and actually got something something's coming out quite soon, isn't it?
I think it's just out. It's
it's a CD.
A CD
yeah?
with my friend Stan Salzman. He was the first person that booked me when I was living in Leeds, and we recorded in, I think it was 1994. And Stan's been such a supporter of younger musicians, including myself at that time. And he's become a great friend. And, you kind of play on and off, don't you, with people you have long relationships with. And he said, would you like to just do, an album not too rehearsed? We just go into the studio and play together, I suppose, old friends playing tunes that we love. So it's called Stardust, and it's on Jelly Mould record label.
One question I'm always asking people now, it's kind of my trademark at the end of the show. So let's look ahead in 5 years' time. What would you like to be doing in 5 years' time? The same, something else?
I'd like to do some studying, as in writing studying, actually. If there was ever a chance to have some time out for more time to write, definitely, that's something I'd really like. I've been nominated quite a few times for the Paul Hamlin Award and various awards. Never quite got there, but it's been good because it's kind of made me think about if I had the money to do something, what I'd like to do. It's one of those Banff places where you go on retreat. If there was a chance of that, just to move things forward.
So a bit of time, a bit of money to do some writing.
Yeah, and kind of getting into new areas, because it's all developing with experience, I suppose, and you're playing with different people. And I'll be writing more music for the printmakers, because Norma's 75 in, I shouldn't maybe say that on radio, I think she's quite okay about it, but she's 75 in September next year, so I might try for a big project to do Barbara Hepworth, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe with the gallery up in Wakefield, and then maybe a sort of tour right down to St Ives.
Wow. If there's any Arts Council people out there listening, this sounds like a fantastic project. My guest today was Nikki Iles. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.